thyroidmixzone.com. Today, going to be a topic of great interest to certain people and maybe of no value to others, but I think there's going to be a large number of people out there that will be interested in this topic and will benefit from this topic, which is talking about thyroid replacement, people that are on thyroid meds. Unfortunately, there's a lot of ground that could be covered, and to keep this, on time, to not go too long, I still have to kind of focus this conversation down to some real specifics. This is going to be a discussion for people that are already on thyroid meds, that are on T4, thyroxine generally, but there's others, but that still don't feel well, that aren't doing well, which is a lot of people in my experience, thousands or millions of people. But there's a lot of other areas that I could go into that would just take too long, such as somebody might ask, are there nutrients that would improve thyroid function? Well, there are, and you'd have to look them up. For example, iodine deficiencies are actually not that uncommon anymore. They used to be pretty rare because they put iodine in salt, but a lot of people backed off on using salt. So iodine deficiencies are actually increasing. There's other nutrients too that support thyroid that people could look into, and all that. That's one whole other discussion about how do we support thyroid and all that. But like I said, I really want to narrow this down to those people that are already on thyroid meds, obviously T4, which is the standard thyroid med, and just don't feel well and aren't doing well and are struggling and unhappy. And I'm going to go a little outside my comfort zone in this video, because I'm going to talk about a little bit about some of my own medical related things, which I don't really like to do. I like to keep my personal business personal. But I think in this context, it'll be helpful to people, because I know that most people that struggle with thyroid issues, in particular, really end up feeling like nobody understands what they're going through, what it feels like to have your doctor telling you that your labs are fine, and that's you're fine, and you're not feeling fine, and you're not getting anywhere. So in that context, I understand where you're coming from. I have no thyroid. I had a thyroidectomy 17 years ago, and I have also had to deal with this. Now, unlike other people who may be watching this that just had had hypothyroidism and all that, well, I'm in the smaller group of people who have no thyroid at all. So I assure you that I know where you're coming from and what that feels like. And I have had to deal with that struggle and that situation with my own doctors. Well, basically 17 years, on and off, and we'll get to that in a minute. So I want to put that out. Now, why I had a thyroidectomy is another story for another day. I don't want to go again. I don't want to go into it here. But I just so that watching this, that those of you that are struggling with this, have been struggling with that situation, I really understand where you're coming from, and I think that will help us connect on that level, where somebody else watching this who doesn't know that I have had similar issues might be thinking, well, he's just talking off the surface of what he's read, and doesn't know what it feels like and so forth. So anyway, I do. So with that out of the way. Basically, here's there's two topics I want to talk about. Sorry, the basic one is the one I just introduced, which is those on basically general thyroid meds, thyroxine, T4, that don't feel well, and we'll get into that. And the other one is those that are on SSRIs, which are antidepressants, which again, there's millions of people on SSRIs, and I'm going to add something a little later to them too. Now, there's probably a few, even some people watching this that are on both. So, all right, so let's get back to the big one, though. So what studies have found consistently is that for those people that are on T4 that are not doing well, that don't feel well, the addition of T3, it has huge differences, huge value to them and how they feel. And there's quite a bit of data on that. Now, I just updated an article on that with sources, so I will post that below this video. So don't worry about keeping notes or anything like that, or paying too much attention. But I updated an article recently, and again, I did it because I've been having some of my own issues dealing with with some doctors on this particular situation myself, and I'm very frustrated. I have to be honest with you. And I also feel really bad for people out there, because if someone like myself, who knows the science, who researches this stuff all the time, who can talk the talk to his medical doctors and stuff, has this much trouble and frustration, I feel really bad for the other people out there who don't even have those resources and those abilities. So if it's hard for me, and I'm 17 years into this nonsense, I can only imagine how difficult it is for other people that struggle with this. So, and I felt, after I updated that article and want to get to sort of my own situation that I had, I'm frustrated, and I'm gonna vent a little bit, and I'm gonna go a little outside my comfort zone in maybe calling some of the med pros out that I rarely do. I try not to criticize medical doctors and med pros too much. I mean, I'll be honest, where I think they do a good job and where they don't. But I also know it's a tough job, and I got a lot on their plate, and they're busy people, and we expect perfection out of them maybe too often and all that. And so I try to be balanced about this. But no, like I say, I'm a little frustrated, and you're gonna hear some of that. So back to what I was saying. People that, like I said, are on T4. So what is T4 and T3? Just to give you, if you don't know what this is. So T4 is sort of the storage thyroid hormone, sort of the depot where the body, it's the long-term depot. And when the body wants the active thyroid, it converts T4 to T3. T3 is the active thyroid. That is the one that's actually doing, when you think of thyroid, as far as your energy levels and cellular respiration and all that, that's T3. Now there's types of there's reverse T3, there's free T3, we could go down that, but let's just call it T4 and T3. So basically, when doctors do labs on people, they should do T4, TSH, and T3 at minimal, and many times they don't. Again, I hear consistently from people working with their doctor who is helping them with their replacement, their thyroid management, who do not even test T3, which makes no sense to me. Because T3 is literally, I mean, if I was going to test one thing out of three, it would be T3. It wouldn't be TSH nor T4. Now, again, there's a reason. You want, obviously, as big a clinical picture as you can get, so you certainly should test T4 and TSH and T3. But that some only test TSH is absolutely poor medicine, as far as I'm concerned. That some only test T4 and TSH, I think, is poor medicine, is poor clinical management. And I think the minimum, again, should be T4, TSH, and T3, and probably free T3. So when you're taking now, most doctors, most allopathic, typical quote unquote medical doctors, and this is not all, because if somebody's watching this, and I hate to use the cliche and say, well, some of my best friends are doctors, and they are, and I do personal work with doctors. I do consulting work for some doctors, and vice versa, and so I have a lot of ongoing discussions and conversations here. So this is not all doctors, but let's just say the majority of medical doctors that I have spoken to and get feedback from people basically use T4, and that's pretty much all they use. I think they're generally taught in medical school that T4 is all you need, because obviously the body will convert T3 from T4 as needed, which is true for some people, but not for everybody. We'll get to that in a moment. And they just don't have any real interest in trying T3, employing, adding T3 to somebody's regimen. There's a number of reasons for that too. There's some real resistance to the use of T3 by a lot of medical professionals, most of which is not justified. It is not supported by data. It's very outdated reasoning as to why they won't even try. Some of it there are some concerns. I mean, high dose, you have to be careful with T3. Think about, again, T4 being the depot hormone, is that, again, as I mentioned, that in theory, as someone, the body requires T3, the body will convert T4 to T3, T3 being the active hormone. Now, T3 is very, very powerful stuff. And the use of higher dose T3, like there were people diet doctors and stuff, and people way back in the day that would use high doses of T3, which is quite dangerous. Again, you can get elevated blood pressure, you can get elevated heart rate, and so forth. It can be potentially dangerous. And again, this is something you don't take on yourselves. It's something you work with a medical professional to titrate your dose to what's right for you. But most of the major concerns and fears and stuff of why there's just this immediate resistance to the use of T3 is not justified. And there is, like I say, there's quite a bit of data now, which is linked in the article, so don't worry about that. So not demonstrating, I was going to say suggesting, not suggesting, is demonstrating that people who are on what they call monotherapy, which is just, the one drug, do considerably better in their subjective and how they feel, and energy and mood and depression and even weight gain and so forth with the addition of some T3. Now, we're going to sort of go into two categories of people. There's people like myself that demonstrably do not convert T4 to T3 very well. Now, my blood work not that long ago, and I'll explain what happened with this. I was on T4 monotherapy. My T4 levels were very high. They were right at the top of the lab range, if not even a little above. And my T3 levels were right at the very bottom of the range, just a point into normal, which clearly showed that I was not converting T4 to T3. Those people are probably a little rarer, but again, that is an objective measure and a demonstrably objective lab measure showing that this is not working for the person, and the inclusion of some T3 is likely to benefit them. Now, another problem with some medical professionals, again, not all of them, but many of them, and again, I hear this complaint from many, many people over the years, and we're going to stick to, they do this with a lot of things when it comes to any kind of hormone, but let's just stick to thyroid, that they will treat you like a lab number, and you're not a lab number. Human beings are not a lab number. They should be treating, especially with thyroid, but any hormone, but thyroid especially, they really should be treating on labs and symptomology. That is how you feel, subjective, how you feel. But again, unfortunately, many of them are going to treat you like a lab number. So what are we talking about there? So when you're talking about labs, right? I mean, many times, unfortunately, as long as you're within the range of normal, and the range of normal is considerable. If you're literally like 2 points over the low end, you're quote unquote normal, and they won't do anything about it. Now, that would be might be referred to as subclinical hypothyroidism. That is a term where you are not clinically hypothyroid, but you are on the low end of quote unquote normal, and you're going to feel like shit. Let me be straight up about that. Okay, if you are on the low end, the way low end of normal, especially in T3, remember, because that's the active thyroid hormone, you are going to feel like dirt. And guess what? I felt like dirt. And like I say, I'm going to get back to that discussion a little bit, because you would say, well, if he's been at this for 17 years, why wasn't he on some T3? Well, I was, but like I said, give me a minute. Second kind of person, their labs may indeed show, again, remember I just said about normal range. Their labs for T4 and T3 may appear normal. However, they're still not doing well, and they don't feel well. And again, the data shows even with those people, they get considerable benefit from the addition of T3. And so there's no reason not to employ that. If you're on T4, you're on thyroxine, you're on generic, whatever, your numbers are good and you feel good, then again, this is not a discussion for you. But again, and I don't know if there's any data that's compared the groups of people. Most of the data that I've looked at that exists is obviously they did these studies because they found these people were not doing well. They weren't doing well on monotherapy subjectively. Sometimes objectively, like myself, sometimes subjectively their labs are okay and they didn't feel well. But every time in every study that I've looked at, of which there are a fair number, like I say, found that people felt considerably better. Now, you all know, anybody that knows what it feels like to be hypothyroid knows what a miserable experience that is, that you are exhausted, you don't feel well, you take naps in the middle of the day, you're falling asleep, you got no energy, you have no libido, you gain weight. It is just a miserable existence, and there's no reason for it. There is zero reason for it. This is one of the easiest things to treat on the planet. Okay. So let me get back to my own situation, what kind of prompted me to do this video and update my article. So I was on T4 and T3 uh, for a long time. Did pretty well. Again, I was always having tussles with different medical professionals and stuff as to like how much they were always just. Even though I would talk them into adding T3, which took some time, but at least they knew I knew what I was talking about. I would send them data. We'd go back and forth, and we'll talk about that in a second. And okay, they'd say, okay, I'll try. I'll try 10 mics. We'll add 10 mics, and that's a very small dose, but it still helped. And sometimes you kind of got to take your battles, your wins where you can, and I have enough fights on my hands. But I was on T4 and T3 for a long time. Again, finally got the doctor to do it. I moved from New England to Florida. Had started from scratch, finding another doc, to deal with who would do it and talked him into it. And, she finally did. And then COVID showed up. So when COVID showed up, that, for whatever reason, the doctor I was working with retired. She quit. I don't know. My prescription was up. I called in to get another prescription, and the new doc said, no, I won't write for T3. I'm not comfortable writing for T3 without labs. And I said, look, I'm already on it. You have my prior labs. No, I won't do it. And this is an endocrinologist. We're going to get to that in a minute too. Endocrinologist said, no, I won't write for it. Sorry. Now, and I won't write for it without seeing you. I said, look, I'm not coming into a hospital in the middle of COVID for you just to see me in person, like that's going to change anything. Nor do I want to go to a lab right now, considering that every sick person, they don't want you to go to labs. This was like in the height of everything when things were really bad. They didn't want people to go to labs unless they were going to get tested for COVID or it was an emergency, So I said, look, I'm not going into a hospital or to a lab right now. And she said, well, I'm not going to write for you, but I'll write for T4 because that's what I'm comfortable with. But so I ended up on T4 only. Figured, okay, look, I'll do the T4 for a while. I'll get, when all this kind of gets better and we're doing better with COVID, I'll get some labs done and so forth. And, the COVID thing dragged on. And so I was on just T4 for, I don't know, a couple of years, and so, boy, I felt terrible. And it takes a while for it to creep up on you. It's not like a week later when you're off T3, you like feel worse. It can take months or even longer to really creep up on you. But it got to the point where, like I said, I was really feeling bad. And I, was really furious. Honestly, now I'm really mad at this doctor who was refusing to help me. And I let her know it, and I let her, again, you have to be your own advocate. You have to be your own, or unless somebody else is advocating for you. But you have to kind of stake your ground on this type of thing. And like I say, we're going to get to that in a minute. So I ended up having to order my own T3. Which I didn't want to do. I shouldn't have had to do, but I ended up having to get T3 from another source and put 10 mics back in and go get some blood work. It was still not enough. I'm now working myself back into the proper lab. You got to get regular labs. Remember, when we're talking about this is regular lab work here, which I'm paying for out of pocket, right? That sucks too, but another topic. Where was I? I'm actually getting frustrated. Like I say, this is a personal topic to me. So, so I finally got this. I think I'm got it kind of squared away. I have another lab run to do to see if I'm where I want to be, and then I'm going to find a new doctor and basically say, look, here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm taking. Here's my labs. I feel best on these doses. Will you, continue to do this with me? Because that's all I want to hear. Anything else, I'm just going to keep doing my own thing if I have to. I shouldn't have to. But again, that's what I'm going to be doing next. Now, for you guys that are listening to this, that are saying, okay, what do I do now? Now, another thing, I want to give the medical pros. I might be sounding a little harsh on some of them, but I do want to give some of these med pros again a bit of a break. Remember, they can't know everything all the time. They can't be up on the latest data all the time. You have to understand that doctors work horrific numbers of hours. They spend a lot of time on paperwork. Yes, we'd like them to be reading the latest, greatest studies on everything all the time, but they just can't. Sometimes what you have to do is you actually have to educate your doctor. You have to work with them. Always work as a team. They're you're working with them as a team. It should never be. It should never, hopefully, be a confrontational thing, or if it is, it's not working well. But hopefully, you're working as a team together. But sometimes you have to educate them. So here's what you need to do if you're in that situation. That is, you are somebody on monotherapy that is not feeling well and want to try some T3. Would be to approach your doc about that and see what their response is. You can go to that article, and what you can do is you can either download studies and send it to them. You can send them that article, and they can go look it up. Approach them about it and say, look, I really want to try adding some T3 into my therapy. And now, if they say, I'm not familiar with it, I haven't done it, but okay, let's talk about it. Well, that's great. That's where you want to be. That's the kind of doctor you want to work with. If they say, maybe they're the kind of doctor that says, sure, I'm open to it. I've done it before. I mean, no problem. Great. You're even better. If you get the doctor or, nurse practitioner, or whatever, medical professional, I'm just going to keep saying doctor, but you know what I'm talking about. Whoever is, managing your thyroid, who says, no, I will not do it. I don't believe in it. I don't want to hear about it. Then you find another doctor. Okay. Do not take no for an answer, because you will feel substantially different on the proper amount of T3. Do not take no for an answer. If you get a doctor who refuses to look at the data, because that's what we're going with. We're not just, a pseudoscience talking here. If they refuse to look at the data, they refuse because, again, some of them are very, very resistant to using T3. Some of them have been told, there's no value, it doesn't matter, it's dangerous, and so on and so forth. If you have that type of doctor, then find a new one. That would be my advice. I would not take no for an answer on that one. That's my advice. 2, I would not do it alone. Do not, unless you're somebody who has a substantial science medical background, who knows how to read labs, who's going to get regular lab work and all that. I do not recommend doing this on your own. I would, you definitely want to find a competent medical professional to work with on this, but do not take no for an answer. That would be my, advice. And if that pisses off any medical doctors or whatever, then I just don't care, frankly, because I think they're I'm going to call them out and say they're poor medical practitioners at that point. Another, and the ones I want to call out a little bit, and this is going to make, again, some mad, but endocrinologists. Now, remember, endocrinologists are supposed to be hormone specialists. This is their specialty, so I do expect them to be up on the literature and all that, much more than, say, a GP or an internist or, whatever you're working with. And I have found almost consistently in my own experience that they are terrible at their job. They absolutely are horrendously bad at thyroid management. And I can give them no slack for this because, again, this is supposed to be their area of expertise. And I don't blame, like, say, your GP, your internist, or other specialist that's not their area. They're helping you, they're managing you, and so forth. I will give an endocrinologist no slack on this. And when it comes to hormone management in general, again, we can go into other hormones, testosterone replacement and so forth. They are just terrible. Now, I'm not saying all of them, obviously, someone will always take this out of context and claim that I or whatever am saying that they're all subpar at their job. That's obviously, it's not true, but I will be honest and say that I have been stunned with personal conversations with my interactions with endocrinologists. I mean, the doctor who turned me down, the one that would not replace my thyroid, was an endocrinologist. I was already on it. I already had labs, and she refused to do it because she was not comfortable. And that, frankly, the medical term for that is bullshit. That's what that is. And I'm frustrated because I shouldn't have to go through all that trouble, and neither should you. Let's see what else to cover. Okay, 2 more points before I get off. Natural thyroid. So the one question I'm sure that will come up, somebody will say, well, what about natural thyroid? Talking about desiccated thyroid. There's a couple of them out there that basically they're pig thyroid, they're desiccated thyroid, and they do contain T4 and T3. And some people do really well on it. It's definitely an improvement for most people over T4 monotherapy. However, I don't think it's an optimal way to go, and I'll tell you why. Because the the ratio of T4 to T3 in pig thyroid is not the same as human thyroid. You're locked into a ratio that is actually very high on T4 and quite low on T3, and so you can get into a situation where your T4 may be overly elevated, your TSH might be overly suppressed, and you're still not getting those T3 numbers up where you want them. So you're kind of locked into a ratio that you can't really change with desiccated thyroid. If you're taking thyroxine and you're taking T3 separately as two separate medications, you can titrate both of them to you. You can get that exact amount of T4 and T3 for you, where both your labs are where you want them to be, your doctor wants them to be, and you're feeling a lot better. Again, if desiccated thyroid is working for you and you like it, great. Again, I'm not against it. I'm just saying I've never been a huge fan of desiccated thyroid. For some people, that amount in that ratio, especially if you're mildly hypothyroid, you're just subclinically hypothyroid, a little bit of desiccated thyroid may just be just right for you. So just again, there's nuance here, but I think that in general, I think you're better off. Like the amount of T4 you're on right now might be just right for your T4 levels and your TSH levels, and just adding a little additional T3 separately, usually starting off low, like 10 mics is a very low dose, is the way to do it, and get labs, 6 to 8 weeks down, see what 10 mics does, and work your way up. Again, keeping an eye on what your doctor should be keeping an eye on, things like your blood pressure and your resting heart rate and all that. Okay, so that's the thyroid talk. Final quick topic, as I mentioned, SSRIs. Many people are on SSRIs, and guess what? Data has found consistently that for those people that do not respond well to their SSRIs, the addition of T3, again, has statistically significant effects on their mood and their depression and so forth. Again, I don't know why this is not better known, because you have all these antidepressants that don't work for some people. They don't feel much better, and now there's all these extra drugs that you'll see on TV about adding this to your Cymbalta, I think, is one of them, but there's a number of new fancy overly expensive drugs that they want to add on to the SSRIs, whereas there has been consistently good data where adding a small dose of T3 has great benefits on for those people that do not get benefit or not from SSRIs. And again, there are millions and millions of people out there on SSRIs. Now, some people, there's a sort of antidepressant, anti-SSRI, thing on the internet people like to talk about. The reality is that for some people, they are of great value. Some people, I think they're overprescribed. I think that's a whole other topic. I think that they give them out like candy. Unfortunately, with all sorts of other things that could be tried to improve mood and depression and all that, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. Again, I'm just, for you people that are on an SSRI that found that you did not respond well to it or not responding to an SSRI, again, talk to whoever is prescribing it about the addition of T3. I just want to throw that as an extra. So I think that's it. I think I've covered all the major bases. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them below. I try to simplify, again, what is a fairly complicated topic, and a topic that you could go off into a lot of directions that I'm trying not to go off into. So I think some of those will pop up underneath. And remember, article below has all the sources, more details, and all that I think you'll find a benefit, and you can print out or send your doc or whatever if they seem open-minded to trying this, but don't have the information they need. That's a good doc. That's who you want to work with. Don't expect them to know everything and say, oh yeah, sure, I've been reading all the papers on the addition of T4 to T3. They probably haven't. So okay, that's it. Hope you like this video. Sign up, and I'll see you all on the Brink Zone.